My name is Cleo. I am 28 years old. I work as a senior recruiter at a mid-sized consulting firm in Manchester. Last Tuesday I was conducting interviews for a new analyst position. And the fourth candidate walked in and it was Rhys. The man who left me at the altar 3 years ago. He went completely pale. Then my assistant Priya, who was sitting in the corner taking notes, slowly looked up at me. Before I tell you what happened next, could you do me a quick favor? If you like these stories, please like and subscribe and drop a comment below saying what country you're watching from. It really helps more than you know. Okay, let's start from the beginning. 3 years ago I was 25 and completely in love with Rhys Pemberton. We'd been together since university. He proposed on a beach in Cornwall. I cried. My mum cried. His mum bought champagne that cost more than my rent. The wedding was planned for August 14th. I remember that because it was a Saturday and the venue only had Saturdays available in summer. We booked it 18 months in advance. I wasn't one of those brides who goes mad about everything. I didn't care about chair covers or whether the napkins were ivory or cream. My dress was off the rack from a bridal shop that was closing down. 200 quid. It fit perfectly. I thought that was a good sign. Rhys worked in finance. Something with derivatives that I never fully understood. He earned good money. Not crazy money, but enough that we could afford a small flat in Didsbury. I was working as a junior recruiter back then. I liked my job. It wasn't glamorous. Mostly I scheduled interviews and wrote job postings and got shouted at by hiring managers who wanted someone with 10 years experience for an entry-level salary. His family had money. Not loads, but enough that they looked down on people who didn't. His mum Diane was one of those women who smile with their mouth but not their eyes. She called me dear in a way that made it sound like an insult. His dad didn't say much. Just nodded and drank whiskey. They didn't think I was good enough for Rhys. They never said it directly. But I heard Diane on the phone once before Sunday lunch. She said, well, she's sweet I suppose, but I did hope he'd choose someone with a bit more polish. I pretended I hadn't heard. I was good at that. The wedding was at a hotel in Cheshire. One of those big old manor houses with gravel driveways and peacocks on the lawn. Diane insisted on it. She said a registry office would be a bit sad. She paid for half, so I didn't argue. The morning of the wedding was warm. Too warm, actually. I was sweating in the bridal suite. My best friend Lauren was with me. She kept trying to fix my hair, but it wouldn't sit right because of the heat. There was a fan in the corner, but it just pushed hot air around. I had this weird feeling in my stomach. Like when you're a kid and you know you've done something wrong and you're waiting to get caught. But I hadn't done anything wrong. So I ignored it. My dad came up at 11:30. He was wearing a suit he'd bought from Marks & Spencer. He looked uncomfortable. He said, "You look beautiful, love." Then he went quiet. He's not great with emotions. The ceremony was at 12:30. At 12:15, Diane came into the bridal suite. She wasn't smiling. Not even with her mouth. She said, "Cleo, could I have a word in private?" Lauren looked at me. I nodded. She left. Diane closed the door. She said, "Rhys isn't here." I laughed. Actually laughed. I said, "What do you mean? Is he stuck in traffic?" She said, "No, dear. He's not coming." The room went very quiet. I could hear the peacocks outside. They make this horrible screaming sound. I'd never noticed before. I said, "Is this a joke?" She said, "He called me an hour ago. He said he can't do it. He's very sorry." I just stood there. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I think I was in shock. Diane said, "I'll go and tell the guests. You stay here." Then she left. Lauren came back in. She'd been listening at the door. He started crying before I did. She put her arms around me and I just stood there in my 200 quid dress, sweating, feeling absolutely nothing. Diane told everyone that I'd had a medical emergency. That we'd have to postpone. People left. Some of them looked relieved. Weddings are long and boring if you're not part of the family. My mum found out the truth by the evening. She called Diane and Diane told her. Mum came to my flat. I was still in the dress. I hadn't moved. She ran me a bath and sat with me and didn't say anything. That's the thing I remember most. That she didn't try to make it better. Rhys sent me a text 3 days later. It said, "I'm sorry. I wasn't ready. I hope you can forgive me one day." I didn't reply. I found out later from a mutual friend that he'd moved to London 2 weeks after the wedding. New job. Fresh start. No one heard from him much after that. I stayed in Manchester. I got promoted. Then promoted again. I moved out of the flat we'd shared and got a little one-bed in Ancoats. I went to therapy for a bit. It helped. Mostly I just got on with things. That's what you do, isn't it? I didn't date anyone for 2 years. Then I went on a few dates but nothing stuck. I told myself I was fine. I mostly was. 3 years went by. Last month my boss Helen told me we were hiring for a new analyst. She said, "You take the lead on this one. I trust your judgment." I posted the job. We got 63 applications. I shortlisted 8. Sent out interview invitations. Didn't look too closely at the names. I was busy. We had 3 other roles open at the same time. Last Tuesday I was in the office by 8. I had 4 interviews scheduled back to back. Priya was assisting. She's 22, just out of uni, very keen. She always brings 2 pens in case one runs out. I like her. The first 3 candidates were fine. Forgettable. One of them had a coffee stain on his shirt. I noticed but I didn't care. I've hired people and trainers before. I care about competence, not performance. The 4th interview was at 2 p.m. Priya went to reception to collect the candidate. I was looking at my notes. I heard the door open. I looked up. Rhys Pemberton was standing in my office. He looked exactly the same. Maybe his hair was a bit shorter. He was wearing a navy suit. Light blue tie. He looked like every other finance guy I've ever interviewed. His face went white. Properly white. Like all the blood had just drained out. I didn't say anything for a moment. My brain was trying to catch up. Priya was standing behind him, holding her 2 pens. She looked confused. I said, "Please sit down." My voice sounded normal. I don't know how. Rhys sat. His hands were shaking. He put them on his lap. Priya sat in the corner with her notepad. I said, "So, Rhys Pemberton. Thank you for coming in today." He said, "Cleo, I didn't know you worked here." I said, "No. I suppose you didn't." There was a pause. Priya's pen was hovering over her notepad. She still looked confused. I said, "Shall we start?" He nodded. I asked him the standard questions. Why do you want this role? What are your strengths? Tell me about a time you handled a difficult client. He answered. His voice was shaky at first, but he got through it. He'd prepared. I'll give him that. I didn't make it easy, but I didn't make it hard either. I was professional. I asked the same questions I'd asked the other 3 candidates. Priya was taking notes. I could see her glancing at me every now and then. She's perceptive. She knew something was off. We got to the end. I said, "Do you have any questions for us?" Rhys said, "No. Cleo, can we talk?" After this. I said, "This is a professional interview, Rhys. If you don't have any questions about the role, I think we're done." He looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was trying to find the person he used to know. I said, "We'll be in touch by the end of the week. Priya will show you out." He stood up. He hesitated. Then he left. Priya closed the door behind him. He turned to me. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." She said, "Who was that?" I said, "Someone I used to know." She sat back down. She said very quietly, "He left you at the altar, didn't he?" I stared at her. I said, "How did you?" She said, "You went completely still the second he walked in. I've never seen you do that." And he looked like he'd seen a ghost. It wasn't hard to work out. I didn't say anything. She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Nothing. I'm going to assess him like I assessed the others. And if he's the best candidate, I'll recommend him. If he's not, I won't." She looked at me like I was mad. I said, "I'm not going to sabotage him, Priya. That's not who I am." She said, "He sabotaged your whole wedding." I said, "I know." We sat there for a minute. The office was very quiet. It was late afternoon. Most people had gone home early because it was summer. I said, "He wasn't the best candidate anyway. The second one, Kieran, was better. Better answers. More relevant experience. I'll recommend Kieran." Priya nodded. She said, "For what it's worth, I think you're incredible." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just smiled. That night I sat in my car in the car park for 20 minutes before I drove home. I wasn't crying. I just needed to sit. I didn't tell anyone. Not Lauren. Not my mum. What would I even say? Helen asked me on Friday who I wanted to move forward. I said Kieran. He said, great. Send him an offer. I never heard from Rhys again. He didn't call. Didn't email. I don't know if he expected me to reject him or hire him or what. The thing is, I didn't want revenge. I didn't want him to suffer. I just wanted him to be a stranger. And for those 30 minutes in my office he was. I think that's the closest I'll ever get to closure.
So this was an interesting story like other stories of this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe and also do a nice comment on each video.